pleasure to be with you.
When could products be available? The bill in the Alabama Medical Cannabis Commission was set up rules of implementation in September of next year would be the earliest. How would products be packaged? The commission would approve a color image as a universal state symbol to go on all packages. Packages would list the content, potency of the cannabinoids. They would be child-resistant, not designed to appeal to children. Oral doses could not be sugar-coated. And then they go on and warn about the warning labels and everything else. How would the products be tested? The state would use issue licenses for state laboratories to test the cannabis for cultivators and the finished product. And they go, and how would the product be taxed? They are going to tax it as of yesterday at 9%. How would the revenues be spent? It would be spent to cover the cost of regulating the program, and the excess would go to the general fund. So these people have done a lot of homework for us. And I don't know if you were listening, but of all the research that we need to do, they have put that into implementation with the governor signing the bill yesterday. Who would do the research? The bill would establish the Consortium of Medical Cannabis Research, and then they mentioned some of the biotechnical people there. Why would the program be fully intrastate? According to legislation, that would reduce the risk of exposing companies to penalties under federal law. And one more, how would the public know how the program is working? The Alabama Medical Cannabis Commission would file its annual report, number of patients, the condition, et cetera, et cetera. So,
got a question.
It is a good template for that. Yes, sir.
What do you do for money?
What do you mean, what do you do for money?
Can you use a credit card, or is it all cash?
I don't think it says that on here, but I doubt it very seriously. I don't think you can. What would you think, sir?
Well, how to purchase it?
Yeah.
I would think you could use a credit card.
You
I don't know.
so?
I'm not familiar with that piece of legislation.
Well, I'm wondering
interested in it, though. What you said seems to be a lot like what we had talked about
in
concept, anyway, without reading the bill.
I don't know if you were listening, but would you find, and I find merit in the idea that sooner or later, they are the 37th state that's going to do this. Sooner or later, it's going to be across the South. We know that. Do you see some merit in all of us mirroring the same laws and regulations from Alabama to Mississippi, Louisiana, the surrounding states? So the people in Meridian, the people in Greenville, people up in Ocean Springs, etc., when you cross state lines, if you have the same amount on that, if you've got your card, it's not reciprocal because of federal guidelines, of course, but it seems like it would stop a lot of problems for the police, incarceration, lawsuits, et cetera, et cetera.
I think the more uniform it is, correct.
No.
The more uniform it is, the less you have for those things as you talked about, the less you would have for competition and one state trying to distinguish itself over another. And as you rightly point out, it would probably be a good idea.
It's one of those things I don't think we're going to be able to avoid, because if we don't do it, then, again, it's going to make a lot of people mad, since everybody is quoting the 70-something percentile of people who want this thing. So,
well, I think that was a statement by the people of what they want.
Yeah.
And more than anything, they voted for the concept of medical marijuana. Now it's incumbent upon us to figure out a way to make that happen. What you just read coming out of Alabama is more in line with what I think we had in mind when we passed that alternative to 65A, which simply said the state of Mississippi shall have and establish a medical marijuana program. We now need to go forward and make it look like, and I was a guest on your show, Paul. We talked about 65 and the problems that 65 had, and I think most people did not understand. They didn't read the 7 pages and understand the implications of the 7 pages. But now we have an opportunity to go forward and craft something that accomplishes what they want and yet reap the tax benefits of it, as you pointed out.
Did we have, and we talked about this yesterday, did our bill 65A, I'm not sure if it explicitly said this, or the one that died in the legislative action in 2021, did it specifically say only for terminal patients?
I don't recall. 65A, I don't think
65A did.
65A was very generic. It just said the state of Mississippi shall have a medical marijuana program. And then the instructions there were for the legislature to go forward and craft that program, working in conjunction with the Department of Health to accomplish a program that would provide medical marijuana to those who need it.
In all honesty, the one that passed through the legislature, or we tried to get through the legislature, was more of a placeholder in case the Supreme Court did what it did ultimately.
Well, it recognized the extreme problems with 65, which, again, you and I have talked about that numerous times, putting it in the Constitution, limiting how it could be taxed, limiting where it could be zoned, on and on and on. Those were problems with 65. And so 65A was an alternative to let the people say, hey, we want the medical marijuana program, but we want it to be established in a way that is responsible, not what 65 is.
As Speaker of the House, do you have any problems at all as far as giving the municipalities an opt-out clause in whatever takes place and makes its way through the House?
You talking about moving forward and developing a program?
Yeah, whatever the bill is that somebody's going to write, should there not be an opt-out clause for their municipalities?
Well, I know the municipalities, at least some of them, are.
They have that in Alabama, by the way.
Do they in that bill?
Yeah, and in California and many other
states. I think
it's
just something we'll have to evaluate. We've not heard, at least I've not heard from the municipal league as far as what their position is on that.
I would think Madison would probably, you wouldn't have to hear from them.
Yeah, we may know where they stand.
Yeah, well, yes. I can understand that. So.
Well, I'll tell you, it's my understanding from the 65, the thing that really had the municipal league worked up was, or the municipalities, is the limitation on zoning. I don't know that they're against, and I'm not speaking for them because I haven't heard from them. I don't know how much they're against medical marijuana. They were, however, wanting the ability to control where the shops were set up.
And the number of shops.
And the number of shops. Yeah. And under 65, they were handicapped, or handcuffed, I guess is a better word, in doing that. It instructed them that what they could and could not do. And that's what the cities didn't like.
Were you shocked by the ruling from the Supreme Court?
In the beginning, I didn't think it would ever get there, but as time marched on, the more I heard talk, I did not personally watch the oral arguments, but I had friends who did, and they said, hey, now that if the oral arguments have occurred, it may very well be the case. And so when it came down, I think I was probably surprised, but I wouldn't say shocked, because it seemed that all the arrows were pointing in that direction in the days leading up to it.
When you look at the timeline on this, when they're going to have theirs instituted, and apparently by the late summer or fall in 2022, it'll be on the ground or
you're talking about Alabama? Yeah.
And I don't know if you heard, but the list, there's 15 different categories and conditions and symptoms that they cover, which I think is basically the same thing, even to the line of depression, which is wide open. But again, the doctors would have to make that determination. So that matches what 65 for the most part. So if we went with Alabama, we would be doing basically what the voters voted on. And I haven't double-checked this, but it seems like it would mirror what they want.
Yeah, I would have to double-check it too, but I'm not familiar with the Alabama law. All I know about is what you just told me, but it does sound like it has some merit to it.
Have you you did make a statement, and the statement was that you were in favor of putting this bill through and working on it.
You talking about the initiative?
The initiative. I'm sorry, the initiative
process. Yeah, that statement I put out there yesterday, just as a general comment on the initiative process. As you know, we've had this process for some time, and that's what the Supreme Court ruled, is that process was invalid. Now, the consequence of that was that the medical marijuana initiative was set aside. But the initiative process is a way that the citizens can put items before the public that they feel strongly about. As you know, it requires a certain number of signatures, and those signatures then, if they achieve those signatures, the item is put before the public. We've done that on a number of things over the years, and some have succeeded, some have not. But the ruling of the Supreme Court on Friday was that process was flawed and invalid and was set aside. And so my statement was a comment on the initiative process, not specifically.
So you are all in favor of at least taking up the initiative process. Can it be done? It's a long-term process, and if it's a long-term process, what's the necessity of calling a special session?
Well, the initiative process, of course, gives the citizens a right to express their views on public policy, particularly in instances where they think the legislature should act and the legislature has not acted. It's a very important right. Many of our citizens view it as such. And so the ruling of the Supreme Court on Friday basically declared the process that we had in place was invalid. And as you rightly point out, we need to get that process reinstated in some fashion for the citizens. So there needs to be a consideration given, a plan developed. How are we going to do that? How are we going to reinstate that process? And so I would favor a special session to go ahead and begin those discussions and get that done.
Then you'd have to have, from my understanding, you have to have 2/3 of the House, 2/3 of the Senate vote for that. And then it's got to be put on the ballot at the next election, which would probably be...
Wouldn't be until 2022.
November 2022.
Because we don't have any November elections this year.
So it would be a while before the initiative process, which means anything that was in the can on the tarmac there, the Medicaid expansion, all of that, is going to go. We'll have to find a different way of getting it done.
Well, until the initiative process is reinstated, yes.
Would you change anything on the initiative process while we're talking about, other than the district, which was the major problem for the Supreme Court? What else would change there? Because the more you look at this and the more of these that are filed, there are some problems with the process itself. Would we have a study committee? Would we look at maybe changing some of the things on the initiative process?
Well, again, I think we would have to look at just how it has worked in the past and are there any improvements that could be made. I know some other states have other models or do it in different ways, so I think that would be part of the process, just evaluating what we think the best process could be.
Have you heard from the governor or the lieutenant governor at all on this, as far as a special session or any talks about this at all?
No, sir.
And you haven't heard from the governor as far as the possibility of a special session?
No. Have not.
The Senate President or Pro Tem Dean Kirby said he would not be opposed to a special session. I think Mike Watson also said that he would not be opposed to a special session. If we do not do that and someone files a lawsuit against, let's just say, the eminent domain or the voter ID, it's going to be a long-term situation as far as adjudication there, but would that have any bearing on the immediacy to get this done?
Well, I don't recall the eminent domain where that stands, but I know on the voter ID, we've already put that into statute.
So if they file a lawsuit, I mean, it's not going to...
It's already the law in Mississippi.
It's already the law.
We passed statutes to put the voter ID in,
The revenues look pretty good for last month.
Yes, sir. Revenues.
Did I hear we were $700 million over estimate?
I think that's about right.
Yeah.
Maybe 800 is what I heard.
800 now.
Yeah. So we're heading into the last month of the fiscal year. We run a July 1 to June 30. We are, what is today? May the 18th. So we're halfway through the month of May, and we're headed towards the last month of the year. We may approach $1 billion. Overestimate.
Then, of course, the end of next month will be when the new fiscal year, like you said, started, and some of the new laws will roll in. Anything? What's going on as far as this, when you start the budget process? That's coming up pretty soon.
Yeah, we do budget hearings again in September, and we begin hearing from the agencies as to what their needs are, what their requests are. That'll last a day or two, and then we come back in October, and after those hearings, our budget analysts set out to craft a proposed budget. We come back in October and take that information, and then we'll eventually adopt the budget in December. We give them instructions and guidance, and then in December we'll adopt a recommendation. That's just a recommendation from the budget committee, but the budget won't be done until the end of March.
If a special session is called and medical marijuana is subject called, is on there, do you think that could be done in during a special session itself within a couple of weeks?
Well, yeah, I do think it could be done. Now, the way we have done special sessions in recent years to avoid excessive expense is to work on whatever the special session pertains to, and try to come to an agreement beforehand, and then call a special session and come in a day or two and pass.
In other words, take a look at the language
try
of
try to get
the
an agreement
bill
before you call a special session. And I've looked recently at the special sessions we've had over the last 10 years, and I think the longest one we ever had was the one in August of 2018, which went for 4 days, and we did the BP money, the lottery, and the road and bridge plan. We did 3 major events in a short 4-day period of time. All the rest of them have been a day or two.
Just jog my memory a little bit, but what was the longest? And the longest, was it during the Barber administration?
The longest special session that I know of was before I ever got elected.
Yeah.
That was in 2002, and it had to do with medical tort reform. And they were there for 83 days.
That's what it was.
I wasn't there then, but it was during the Musgrove administration.
Gosh,
it was 83 days, and that's what. And to your point, that's what we try to avoid. We don't want to call everybody down there just to start working on it. Let's work on the plan before we get down there, and then call the session.
And I know you got to go in a second or two. I'm going to just push this one out real quick because I want to get your feelings on this. What's been the feedback for you since the sessions ended and we're going through soon the summertime? Have you gotten any feedback as far as the personal income tax debate that happened in the House and Senate?
Well, everything I've heard has been positive, and I've said this before. The only objections that I've heard have been either political objections or self-serving objections. But I have been on a tour, if you will. I've been to a number of counties around the state. I've presented the plan, and everywhere I've been, I've received positive reception. I was in Oxford last Friday and spoke with business leaders and elected leaders up there. And you may recall that there were a couple of Ole Miss professors that did an analysis of our report. Those 2 guys showed up at Oxford on Friday, and I let them speak, and I decided they do a whole lot better job than I do. I think I'm going to put them on tour, go around the state. But they gave outstanding commentary on the plan, talked about the economic benefit, the fact that the gross domestic product would go up by $371 million. They talked about the fact right now our system is a double taxation. You are paying sales tax and you're paying an income tax on all your money, and this would just go to a one-time tax, and they just went on and on about how positive the plan was. So.
But in just from what you said a few moments ago, it would be good for the House and Senate. You could handle this possibly in a special session, regardless if it happens in the regular session coming up in January, but that the House and Senate meet, be in coordination with the governor's office and have this thing taken care of so it can go in and everybody's on one accord. You guys have already done your study committee and basically have said you don't need another study committee. The Senate's going to have theirs. I doubt very seriously if anybody in the House is going to be participating in that one. And then the governor, I'm not sure where they are, but they're apparently not going to be a part of that. Have you heard anything about the status of the Senate's committee?
Have not,
or study committee.
But we have put a plan out there. We think it's a strong foundation from which to start. Yeah. We are meeting with Senate leaders to discuss that. Hey, here's the plan. Here's the idea. This is how it works. What are your concerns, and let's address those.
But their economists are not going to be your economists. They're going to get their own.
Well, I hope they have the same ones. I hope that they will find credibility in the economists that we have consulted and used, and that will provide a unity that we can have.
Nobody said when that study is going to be complete, so you guys can take a look at it in house and see where there's some give and take.
Right, as you point out, there's no special session scheduled for the moment, so we're looking at January. We're hoping between now and January we can come get on.